When meeting someone superior, isn't it normal to bring a small gift, like sweets? Can't you even do that? You're undereducated, aren't you? No wonder the performance here can't compare to the headquarters. It's because the branch is full of high school grads, isn't it? The division head from the headquarters, whom we'll call Terry, bombarded me with sarcasm during his inspection at the branch. However, he still doesn't know what my true identity is. But then again, I also don't know his true identity. Please go to the wonderful pastry shop just 5 minutes from here. I'll wait for you to return. I said this simply because I was in a higher position. Yet, the words I spoke with the intention of retaliation ended up connecting people instead. My name is Mark Thompson. I'm nearly 30, single, and while I don't have a girlfriend, I'm not particularly worried about it. That's because, whether you call it a hobby or personal life, I'm quite fulfilled. I've always loved eating, especially sweets, particularly pastries. From strawberry sponge cakes to cream puffs, from chocolate gateau to tiramisu, cheesecakes, panna cotta, madeleines, scones. The list of cakes and baked goods I love is endless. But of course, eating them as much as I like every day would inevitably ruin my health. So, to prevent that, I make sure to exercise more than I eat. I go to the gym and do strength training at home just to eat sweets. Whether that's right or not, thanks to that effort, no matter how much I eat, I don't get fat. Instead, I just keep gaining muscle. And before I knew it, I was known as a muscular guy who loves sweets. There is my favorite patisserie I found recently. It's a little shop called Licht, run solely by a woman. It sells mainly German baked sweets which last long. The additive-free sweets made from local ingredients are so safe and delicious that they are even delivered as snacks to a nearby nursery. Biscuits, chiffon cakes, and other products with low oil and sugar content have a gentle sweetness and a nostalgic taste that I really enjoy. As I frequented the shop, I got to know Lucy, the owner, and as we became friends, she started teaching me about her products. I started to get all my gifts for business partners from Licht, and Lucy was very grateful for it. The company I work for is a major medical equipment manufacturer's branch, different from the headquarters in New York, located in a more rural area. But the air is fresh, and the tranquil townscapes mean a more relaxed atmosphere and flow of time than in New York, making it a popular place to work among the employees. We supply medical devices to hospitals all over America, and despite being in the countryside, there's plenty of work. Perhaps it's the countryside air, but even though the branch employees might seem a bit laid back at first glance, when it's time to get down to business, they're all capable, which is why I trust them completely. Then one day, as I arrived at work, the office was a bit noisy, and as I was wondering why, a colleague approached me. "Mark, have you heard?" "Heard what?" "About the new division head, Terry, from the headquarters." "Terry?" "Yes, apparently, someone new has been appointed, and it's all anyone talks about here right now. It seems to be about the headquarters." "Is he really such a big deal?" "That's the thing. He's been headhunted by President Thompson himself from another company." "Mr. Thompson did? Well, he must be really competent then." "Yes, it's amazing. Not just the new guy but also Mr. Thompson for managing to headhunt him. It appears Terry is quite the sharp individual. He was extremely competent in his previous job, and it's said that the atmosphere at the headquarters changed with his arrival. He's been reviewing all operations from the ground up, and there are rumors of upcoming staff restructurings. The branch has been abuzz with rumors about what kind of person Terry is, which is why it's been so noisy since the morning. Everyone gossips about him, but in their next breath, they express their reluctance to work with him, saying, "It's clear he's a capable person, but I wouldn't want to work with him. He seems scary." Well, It's understandable that the employees might feel uneasy about changes in the workflow and restructuring, even if such efficiency improvements are beneficial for the company. But despite my colleagues' hopes, one day we received an internal email announcing that Terry would be coming to inspect the branch. An inspection means someone will have to act as a guide, right? I really don't want to do it. He seems strict and likely to bombard us with questions. I'd rather not be the guide either. Same here, I'd prefer to avoid it if possible. When employees from the headquarters come for an inspection, there must always be someone assigned as a guide. However, after hearing the rumors, everyone was reluctant to guide Terry. I'll take on the role of the guide. Really, Mark, are you sure? Yes, someone has to do it anyway, and it seems like everyone else would rather not. But it's fine, it's just guiding. Everyone looked at me as if I was a savior, which made me smile a bit. To begin with, I should prepare some coffee and sweets for the day of the inspection. With that thought, I headed to Licht after work. Hello. Oh, welcome. As I entered the store, it seemed like Lucy was wearing a somewhat downcast expression. Despite usually having a bright and beautiful smile, today it seemed clouded. In her hand was something that looked like an old photo, and the moment she noticed me, she hurriedly tucked it into her pocket. Is something troubling you? If you're okay with it, I can listen, but if you'd rather not talk about it, that's totally fine. After saying that, I regretted asking such an intrusive question. Everyone has things they don't want to talk about or be asked about. The fact that she hid the photo earlier was proof of that. Maybe I shouldn't ask after all. Just as I was about to speak again, Lucy shared with a sorrowful look, actually, it's almost my brother's birthday. Your brother? Yes, though it's been over 10 years, almost 20 years now since we've seen each other. I see. My parents used to run a store called Licht, just like this one, in a different place. My brother and I grew up surrounded by cakes and baked goods from a young age. Our daily snacks were usually the unsold cakes, so much so that we got tired of eating them. That's amazing. It's a dream environment for someone who loves sweets. You might not like me saying this, but I'm quite envious. To think that she could eat cake every day, even if they were unsold items, is unimaginable to me. In my family, cakes were a special treat reserved only for birthdays and Christmas. All my friends used to say the same thing, but because I ate them every day, I never felt anything special about having a whole cake on birthdays or Christmas. I often said I didn't want to eat cake anymore. Is that so? Yes, but when I was in elementary school, my parents passed away in an accident. What? At that time, my brother and I were taken in by different relatives. That stuff. Yes, at first, my brother and I kept in touch for letters, but then they suddenly stopped coming. I sometimes wonder if my brother has forgotten about our parents and me. I really missed the cakes our parents made and often cried. I haven't seen my brother since, and I have no idea where he lives or if he's even okay. Every year around this time, I can't help but think of him. I wish I could see him. Lucy shared her painful story with tears in her eyes. I made her cry by asking. Finding the right words was difficult. The photo earlier was of your brother, wasn't it? Yes, it was. I'm sorry for such a heavy story. It's unpleasant, isn't it? I thought you seemed kind enough to listen, so I took advantage of your offer. Thank you. No, I haven't done anything. Does your brother know about this shop? The thing is, I don't have a way to contact him. I've tried asking the relatives who took in my brother when I was training to be a pastry chef, but they said they haven't kept in touch since he graduated high school. I see. There's a cake called Kay's Torte that we used to eat on our birthdays. My dream is to have him try it someday. Kay's Torte. Yes, it's one of the cakes over there. Looking into the display case, what appeared to be cheesecakes were lined up. However, there was a tag labeled K's Tort. To me, it looked just like a cheesecake, but maybe it uses some special ingredients that make it different. I didn't quite understand the difference, but decided to keep my thoughts to myself. Mark, thank you for listening to such a dark and heavy story. No problem, I'm here to listen whenever you need me. I appreciate it, thank you. Here, let me offer this as a service for listening. What? No, that would be too much. Please, consider it a thank you for listening to me. Saying that, Lucy wrapped up a K's Tort for me in addition to the cake I had ordered. When I got home, I tried it. The simple, unadorned cake was indeed similar to a cheesecake. I thought it was so well balanced with sweetness and acidity that I could eat it indefinitely. And 2 days later, today is the day Terry comes for the inspection. All the employees were lined up with tense faces to welcome Terry. Even when President Johnson visited, there was never this much tension among everyone. I wonder what kind of person Terry is. By the time I started to feel truly nervous. Good morning. The man who arrived with a deep voice was tall, slim, and wore glasses, and just as the rumors suggested, he looked like someone who was competent at his job. Thank you for taking the trouble to come here. I will be your guide today. My name is Mark. Mark, nice to meet you. I'm Terry, the head of the department. Thank you for your time to guide me today. The pleasure is all mine. Amidst immense pressure, Terry's sharp eyes captured the entire branch and all the employees, tightening the atmosphere instantly. Perhaps because he seemed a bit nervous, it felt as if everyone suddenly stood up straighter. Before starting the tour, we exchanged business cards, and Terry seemed to snort at mine, as if amused. Anticipating this reaction, I didn't let it bother me and proceeded to show Terry around the office. This is the sales department. On the same floor, we also have the administrative and HR departments. It's basically the same setup as the headquarters. I see, it's a familiar sight. The difference from the headquarters is that we have a laboratory here, which is used for testing product strength and durability. May I see it? Of course, I'll show you around. As I was explaining the facilities and unique aspects of this location, Terry suddenly said, by the way, isn't it normal to present a gift when meeting someone superior, like sweets or something? Excuse me. I was waiting to see when they would appear, considering the tour was ongoing. I see. May I ask, if you don't mind, what is your highest educational attainment? I graduated from high school. After I answered as asked, Terry sneered condescendingly. I thought as much. That explains why the performance here isn't as good as the headquarters. It's because the staff here are undereducated. Terry laughed mockingly. I responded to Terry with a laugh, as if to return the favor. Maybe you're right, Terry. By the way, you mentioned presenting sweets to someone superior, right? There's a very good pastry shop 5 minutes from here. Please feel free to visit. I'll wait for you to return. I hope you'll forgive my tone getting a bit sharp. To say our performance is lacking because we're all high school graduates. That's harsh. What did you say? What are you talking about? As expected, Terry began to get angry, and I handed him another business card, different from the one I had given earlier. This is... Let me introduce myself again. I am Mark, serving as the vice president of the company. I look forward to working with you. The business card I handed over had vice president following a company name. In fact, I am the son of President Johnson of this company and hold the title of vice president. However, since I am still in training, I wanted to work alongside the other regular employees when I am at the branch, so I identify myself as a regular employee. Only a few people in the headquarters know about me, and the colleagues I am working with now are unaware that I am the vice president. I only use this vice president business card when greeting executives or showing myself as the heir at external parties. Although I always carry it in my suit, I never thought I would use it in such a situation. The employees of this branch may indeed include many high school graduates, and it might seem laid back at first glance. I am well aware that our performance may seem inferior to the headquarters when looking solely at the numbers. However, I believe everyone here works very hard. They have a good work-life balance and are more earnest about their work than the employees at the headquarters. Education doesn't matter, after all. Why do you need to compare the performance of this branch, located far away in the countryside, to the headquarters in New York? The population here is smaller, and the amount of work is on a different scale from New York. Yet, everyone here continues to strive daily to generate profits. It might be hard for you, who is new to this area, to understand, but we have our way of doing things here. Please don't underestimate us. Before I knew it, I had launched into an impassioned speech. It couldn't be helped. Terry in front of me was saying such terrible things. Indeed, this place is rural, and not many people are from national or well-known private universities. As Terry said, there are many who only graduated high school. But that doesn't mean they can't do their job, and I know very well that everyone is trying their hardest. When I glared at him fiercely, Terry seemed taken aback and flustered. Then, for some reason, he suddenly began to apologize deeply. "Mr. Johnson, I am terribly sorry for my earlier disrespectful remarks. Please forgive me." His apology was so swift that now it was my turn to be surprised and flustered. What? It must have been surprising to suddenly have such a rude guy come in. What do you mean? To his question, which was hard to answer with either yes or no, Terry smiled and said, "I understand it must be troubling for you to hear such things. Actually, President Johnson asked me to observe you." What? I apologize for testing you and for my extremely rude remarks. What in the world? Confused and holding my head, Terry looked at me with an amused smile. This was different from the mocking, unpleasant smile from before. It was a genuinely amused smile. The Terry I had been dealing with until moments ago, and the Terry standing before me now seemed like two entirely different people, leaving me with nothing to do but blink in disbelief. "President Johnson mentioned that you are very dedicated to your work but might be too kind-hearted. So he wanted me to judge if you are suitable as the next president. That's why I came here." I see, that makes sense, but was it necessary to act in such a manner? My apologies. That was also instructed by President Johnson. He wanted to see how well you understand your employees and whether you could protect them, regardless of whether it's the headquarters or the branch office. So he told me to play the role of the unpleasant guy to check. What on earth was my father thinking? "So you came all the way here just to put on such an act?" Yes, there was indeed a plan for inspection. To that, President Johnson added the task of inspecting you. However, it was very clear how much you care for the employees of the branch. You understand and can protect them well. I'm convinced. I'm almost envious of the employees here. You truly were remarkable, and I plan to report this to President Johnson. Okay. It was truly wonderful. I was moved. To think I went on such a tirade, only to find out it was all a test. The embarrassment is beyond words. Feeling as if my face was about to burst into flames from embarrassment, I turned away from Terry, saying, "Please, give me a moment to gather my thoughts." Terry agreed with a laugh, saying, "Yes, of course," which only made my cheeks burn even more. Just then, my cell phone rang. I excused myself to check the screen, and seeing it was my father's name, I answered in a hurry. The prank was a huge success, he exclaimed with a loud laugh, leaving me speechless. "Dad, how about it? Were you surprised? Terry's acting was perfect, wasn't it? I knew he'd be good at this. Ha ha ha." I was ashamed enough to wish I could just disappear. This must be the perfect situation for such a phrase. I never wanted to know, even over the phone, that my father was laughing about a successful prank. As I sighed heavily, Terry took my cell phone, saying, "Excuse me, Mr. Johnson," and began to speak with my father. "Mr. Johnson, your son is a truly admirable person." I was moved. With him in charge, I believe our company's future is secure. After conveying just that, Terry handed back my cell phone. As I put it to my ear again, I heard my father laughing, saying, "It's good to hear that Terry approves of you." At that moment, all I could do was collapse to my knees. After hanging up with my father and regaining my composure, I realized I might have caused the most trouble for Terry and apologized, saying, "I'm sorry for my father's behavior." But Terry, with a smile, forgave me, saying, "No, I also enjoyed it." Regaining my spirits, we moved to the reception room, where I served the K's tort I bought from Licht. Lucy had given it to me as a service, and I liked it so much that I bought it for today's tea time. Terry's eyes widened at the sight of it, and he murmured, "K's tort." While I found it curious that he could distinguish it wasn't a cheesecake but a K's tort, I explained, "I bought it from a pastry shop about 5 minutes away. It's really delicious, and I'm quite fond of it." "Is that so? I used to love K's tort back in the day, but I hadn't had it for a long time, so I'm delighted. Could I possibly get the name of the shop?" "Yes, it's called Licht." When I showed him the shop's website on my tablet, Terry's eyes widened in surprise. Then, after hesitantly taking a bite and slowly swallowing it, he pleaded, "Mr. Johnson, I know it's presumptuous of me to ask, but could you take me to the shop where you bought this?" He pleaded earnestly. Seeing how desperate he looked, I was reminded of a story Lucy told me the other day. Could it be? With that faint hope, I nodded to Terry. We then left the reception room and headed towards Licht. During the short journey, Terry kept apologizing for taking me away from work, but I asked him to stop because I was hoping that my faint expectation would turn out to be true. And then we arrived at the shop. Looking at the sign with the shop's name, Terry had an indescribable expression on his face. "Hello." "Oh, Mark, welcome. Are you first time here?" "Lucy, it's Lucy, isn't it?" "Terry." "It is Lucy, it's been so long." "Terry, why are you here? How, why?" Seeing Terry's face, Lucy came out from behind the counter in tears. The two embraced, savoring their reunion, and Lucy was sobbing uncontrollably. The hope I had held turned out to be true, and my heart was trembling. They were siblings who had reunited after 20 years. "Terry, what are you doing now? Where do you live now?" I called Ann's place, but she said she didn't know anymore. "Actually, I'm working at a company in New York now. I'm here on a branch inspection, and Mr. Thompson introduced me to this shop's cheesecake. I insisted on coming here because I was sure the taste was yours." "Is that so? What about before? I was worried something had happened to you because the letters suddenly stopped." "Yeah, I'm sorry. There was a lot going on, and I couldn't even think about writing letters." Terry began to reminisce about the past, speaking in bits and pieces. "The aunt's house I was taken to was very strict. They welcomed me because they had no children, but the pressure was immense. I was expected to get good grades, attend a good high school, a good university, and repay their kindness by landing a good job. Of course, I intended to do so without being told, but the pressure was so overwhelming, I'm surprised I didn't rebel." "I see. Yeah, so I was desperate to improve my grades and pay them back, and I lost the luxury of writing letters to you. I'm really sorry for worrying you." "It's okay, as long as you're healthy, that's all that matters to me. Thank you for coming to see me." "Me too. Thank you for keeping Dad and Mom's shop going." The two continued to rejoice in their reunion. Now, they could meet whenever they wanted. Seeing them smile, I was on the verge of tears. It seems the cheesecake Lucy made was a recreation of the taste their parents used to make. I never thought I'd be able to eat your case tort, but you managed to recreate that taste without a recipe. I remade it over and over until it finally resembled the original. It's the taste of our memories, after all. I didn't want to lose it. I always believed that one day you'd eat it and tell me it's delicious. That's all I ever thought about. Hearing that, I couldn't hold back my tears and cried. I'm so glad. Really, I'm so happy. Hey, why are you crying? I'm just moved. That's what we're worried about, you being too kind. You'd cry too, right? You're such an emotional person. Even though I might have dampened the touching moment of the siblings' reunion, I was truly happy they could meet safely. After a while. Hello. Mark, welcome. You're early today. Ever since Terry came, the efficiency of our work has improved, and I've been able to leave right on time. Even though he's been back at the headquarters for a while, he still keeps an eye on everything, and the employees don't have a moment to relax. That's so like a brother. Terry had returned to the headquarters, and I continued to visit Lucy's shop as usual. By the way, I've always been curious, what does Licht stand for? It seems to mean light in German. My brother named it. Terry did. Yes. When our parents were thinking about what to name the shop, my brother suggested, let's name it something starting from L like Lucy. Is that so? Yes. He's been sweet on me since I was born. It's a bit embarrassing, but that hasn't changed. Not at all. It's good to have a close relationship with your siblings. That's wonderful. Thank you. Now, they regularly keep in touch, and Terry occasionally visits, making up for the lost time and maintaining a close sibling bond. It's all thanks to you, Mark, that I could reunite with my brother. I hadn't had the chance to properly thank you. I truly appreciate it. No, I was happy to be part of such a moving moment. As we were laughing, the door behind us suddenly opened. Terry. Hi, Lucy. Mr. Johnson, how are you? Terry, thank you for your hard work. It's been a while. It was Terry who had come, taking a half-day off just to visit. We exchanged pleasant greetings, but Terry couldn't help making a snide remark. Anyway, every time I come to see Lucy, you seem to be here. No offense, but do you have some free time? Maybe you should head back to the headquarters. But knowing he was joking, I played along. I was intending to do just that, but unfortunately, my father still sees me as green and told me not to come back yet. It's you who should consider transferring to the branch if you're taking half days off just to visit your sister. Of course, I've applied for it, but President Johnson won't allow it. It seems we're in the same boat. As we teased each other, we ended up laughing, and I felt a bit happy to have this kind of banter with him. It seems Terry doesn't like me being close to Lucy, showing signs of being a protective brother. Lucy seems happy about it too, so probably that's fine. Imagine, Terry, feared and kept at a distance by everyone at work, is actually this sweet and fond of his sister. If everyone knew, they'd be shocked. No, it might just become the perfect gossip. The rumor would spread to the headquarters in no time. I looked at them, finding the scene heartwarming. The carefully made sweets had reconnected the bond between the siblings that had been interrupted. Their hearts must have always been with each other, and that has finally borne fruit. It's almost like a miracle. Life is unpredictable, capable of bringing about such miracles. Mr. Johnson, are you still here? Shall we have some of Lucy's cake together? Is that okay? Don't think it's a treat, okay? Since you've come all this way, please contribute to the shop's sales. Plus, Lucy seems to be busy with work. How about we discuss work while sitting over there? When it comes to work, you can be quite intimidating. Please go easy on me. That depends on you, Mr. Johnson. Terry, don't drag Mark into this just because you're lonely waiting by yourself. Lucy, what are you saying? Mark, I'm sorry to involve you in this, but if you have time, please keep him company. Ha ha ha. Understood. I thought to myself, watching their smiling faces. Powerful people can afford to be a bit selfish, you know. My wife is a beauty and she's a manager. Quite the contrast to a high school dropout like you. Sitting in a hotel lounge, sipping tea with my wife, an old classmate named Michael appeared in front of us. It seemed there was a networking event for his wife's company at the banquet hall, and he had invited us to join. So that's it, your wife is a manager, I said, trying to probe further. Oblivious to the real meaning behind my words, Michael boasted about his wife as if it were his own accomplishment. Well then, I guess I'll take you up on that offer, I conceded. Michael looked triumphant at having secured his position. Do you still not like peppermint candy? He asked, hoping perhaps his tastes had changed. But my prayer for a change of heart went unanswered. I've always said so, haven't I? That's something for old folks to eat. And your wife agrees, I probed further. Michael hesitated but nodded in agreement. Then consider your wife fired, I declared, unable to forgive his words. Not just for Michael's sake, but for his wife, Emily, as well. My name is Sean. The son of a French patisserie owner and its heir, I found myself working at a traditional American candy company at the age of 35. There was a reason for this distinct change in career. When I was in middle school, the shopping district where our shop was located had become desolate, and many stores were closing down. Concerned, my father decided to focus on what little business we could attract by capitalizing on a lack of cafes in the perimeter. After renovating to include an eat-in space, we saw a visible increase in customers. Just when we thought we had found our footing, an unforeseen change occurred that year. Until then, there was only one confectionery shop in the local station building, but the building was reopening, with a floor dedicated solely to confectionaries. Our customers were swiftly drawn away. All that was left was the debt from the renovation. Customers were decreasing, and repaying the debt on sales alone was impossible. So when I was in my second year of high school, we had to close the shop. I'm thinking of dropping out of high school to work at a traditional American candy shop. You know how I've always said if I weren't the heir to the French patisserie, I'd want to work at a candy shop. While my desire to work in such a shop was genuine, I had always imagined doing so after graduating from college. My attempt to make the financial burden lighter was immediately sensed by my parents, who strongly opposed the idea. It's fine if you want to work at a traditional candy shop in the future, but dropping out of high school is out of the question. We'll manage somehow, so make sure you graduate, they insisted. I've already decided to drop out. When I first dreamed of being something other than a French pastry chef, I thought my dream would never come true. If I work at the candy shop, I can pursue my dream and help pay off the debt faster. It's all good, I argued. The discussion lasted over a week. Realizing my determination, my parents eventually gave in, and I dropped out of high school. I joined a company selling traditional candies as a part-time worker. Since then, the debt was fully repaid, and I even got married 5 years ago. I have no regrets about the path I've chosen. The man who inspired me to dream of working in a candy shop reappeared in my life when everything was going smoothly. As my wife, Annie, and I enjoyed tea in a hotel lounge, a man approached us. Sean, right. Long time no see. He greeted me so warmly Annie must have thought he was a close friend. She greeted him with a smile. It's been a while, Michael. It must be almost 20 years since your shop went under. Are you sure a poor guy like you can afford tea in such a fancy hotel lounge? Did you check how much it costs per cup? I had hoped he'd grown a bit as an adult, but it seemed his mentality hadn't changed since middle school. Just like I declared, I'm now living the dream as a full-time homemaker. I can afford to come to this lounge every week. It's quite satisfying to see the guy who used to lecture me pompously lose everything, unable to even graduate high school. Michael's family owned a traditional candy shop in the same shopping district. His store's peppermint candies were my favorite, and despite being the son of a French patisserie owner, I had fallen in love with traditional American candies. It wasn't that I disliked French sweets, but Michael felt differently. Peppermint candies are for old people. Who would want to inherit such an outdated and unprofitable shop? I'm going to live a luxurious life as a full-time homemaker, he had declared. We were the same age and grew up in similar circumstances, becoming friends as soon as we were old enough to understand each other. However, our relationship changed in the third year of middle school when Michael made that declaration. I always envied him for being able to inherit the candy shop, so I passionately explained how wonderful peppermints were, hoping to change his mind. However, my words were not accepted, and instead of reaching an understanding, our conversation escalated into an argument. Since then, we have been at odds, never speaking to each other again. I met Annie as a regular at the shop where I work now, so she is unaware of our history. I hoped he would leave soon, but then he starts saying things. That's right, there's a party in the banquet hall downstairs. It's a networking event for my wife's company, but the food is luxurious. So I'll make a special exception to let you two in. Isn't it your wife's company's networking event? It wouldn't make sense for unrelated people to join. I pointed out, thinking it was common sense, but Michael laughed loudly. That's such a poor person's way of thinking. People in high positions can afford to be a bit selfish, you know. My wife is a beauty and in a managerial position. That's a mile away from a high school dropout like you. So that's it. Your wife is a manager, I realized. Then Michael glanced at Annie as if to say, unlike your wife, prompting me to stand protectively behind her. Annie works in a bookstore, a lover of books with a quiet personality. She's not good at handling harsh words. What's the matter? I haven't said anything about your wife yet. Anyway, my wife is an important person. Sneaking you two in is easy for me, he boasted. Well then, I guess I'll take you up on that offer, I conceded. Michael looked triumphant at having secured his position. All right, let's meet at the entrance of the venue. Just don't eat too much and embarrass yourself by getting sick, he warned. Annie looked up at me anxiously, but I reassured her, it's okay, and we spent the time until the event in the lounge. Hey, you're the ones that asked for this favor. Why am I here before you? This is why I hate people with a low education, no common sense. Michael greeted us with sarcasm as we arrived at the banquet hall. Sorry, we got delayed because we went to the bathroom, I apologized. Stomachache from nerves. This is why I dislike people not used to these places, he commented disdainfully. I apologized multiple times to Michael as we entered the venue. Once inside, Michael began to show off the venue nonchalantly. Look at this, a networking event in a grand banquet hall of a luxury hotel. Impressive, isn't it? Plush carpets, expensive furnishings, and all-you-can-eat food, he boasted. Despite thinking how he could act so important at an event not even hosted by his company, I listened to his explanations to avoid angering him. By the way, what does your wife do? I asked. Michael's expression twisted at my question. It's written at the entrance. She works for a traditional candy company that you might find in department stores, he reluctantly admitted. I knew he didn't want to say those words, but I pressed on. Despite you not wanting to take over your family's shop, your wife works for a traditional candy company, I pointed out. It doesn't matter. Michael snapped, trying to suppress his irritation by downing his champagne in one go. Do you still not like peppermint candy? I probed, knowing his wife worked in the traditional candy industry. I hoped, even slightly, that his opinion had changed, but my prayers went unanswered. I've always said so, haven't I? That's something for old folks to eat, not something for young, refined people like us, he insisted. And your wife thinks the same? I asked. Michael hesitated but nodded. Of course, he asserted. Then consider your wife fired, I declared. What? Michael was taken aback, then burst into laughter. What authority do you think you have? Are you drunk just from the smell of alcohol? He jeered. After laughing for a while, Michael seemed unsettled by my serious expression. Hey, what's wrong? Is your stomach still upset? He inquired. I couldn't forgive Michael's words. Even for the sake of Michael's wife, Emily. What's all this noise about? Emily, look, this is my classmate. Attempting to ease the tension, Michael introduced his wife to us. Emily looked surprised to see us, which was understandable, since we all knew each other well. You were classmates with President Smith, she asked. President Smith, what kind of joke is that? Not fully grasping the situation, Michael was replaced by Emily in receiving an explanation of our history. It's been about 20 years since we last met. We just happened to meet in a lounge and were invited to join the networking event, I shared. So it was a surprise reunion, and you kept being a president a secret to surprise us. My husband always talks big when he gets carried away, but at heart, he's a coward, so please forgive him, Emily admitted. That side of Michael, I was all too familiar with. Smiling at Michael, who seemed fearful of being exposed in front of his wife, I reassured him. It's time for the speeches. I have to make my way to the stage. Emily watched her husband with curiosity as he dramatically shrugged his shoulders. When it was time for the speech, I took the stage in the venue. Thank you all for gathering here today. Being able to host such a large networking event is only possible thanks to the hard work of all our employees. I began, acknowledging the many employees and Emily, Michael's wife. About 10 years ago, when Emily and I were in the product development department, the company was on the brink of failure. Reminiscent of the atmosphere surrounding my family's French patisserie. Emily, who loved candies and joined this company for that reason, felt the same way. If our company were to fail, traditional candies might disappear altogether. Let's create candies that can change the world. Emily's passionate words bewildered our colleagues, but I was the only one who agreed with her. I think so too. We must stand firm for the sake of the confectionery industry, I declared. We spent our days off visiting traditional candy shops, planning new products essential for the company's revival. After much trial and error, we developed a peppermint candy targeting younger consumers, making it visually appealing, offering a variety of colors, and enhancing online sales. As a result, the product became popular on social media, leading not just to a recovery in performance but also to recording the highest sales ever. This success led to the opening of a peppermint specialty store, and we had regulars like Annie visiting several times a week. Recognized for our achievements, the president at the time asked me to become the new president and bring a new breeze to the confectionery industry. Many still think of peppermint candies as something only the elderly eat, but let's work together to change that perception. From the stage, I could clearly see everyone's faces. Of course, I didn't miss Michael looking away with an awkward expression. After finishing the speech, I received a paper bag from my secretary and returned to Michael. Would you try this? I asked. I offered the candy developed by Emily and me. What, is this some kind of sarcasm? I won't eat that. Michael retorted, attempting to throw the bag on the floor, which I quickly caught. Seeing me act proud, you must have laughed inside, right? How did a high school dropout like you become president? Maybe she's the president's daughter. No, such a plain woman couldn't possibly be. He spat out. continuing his malicious words despite Emily's presence. This candy became popular just because we made it look good, attracting young people. Don't get ahead of yourself, he added. Stop it. Emily also contributed to developing this confection, I interjected. Michael seemed unaware and hesitated for a moment, but his anger towards me probably overcame his hesitation. He didn't apologize to Emily. I've always hated peppermint candy and the idea that ours were the best in the world. Get that out of my sight, Michael demanded. Ignoring Michael's words, I tore open the packaging and opened the box right in front of him. Don't you feel anything seeing this? I asked, revealing the candy. Seeing the candy that came out of the package, Michael was dumbfounded. What is that? They're exactly the same, Michael said, surprised. The best-selling peppermint candy among our products is the green-colored one. It was the signature product of Michael's family shop. Did you become popular by copying someone else's product? I'll spread the truth on social media right away. This company is finished, he threatened. Everyone already knows, even if you don't spread it, while our other peppermints are our original creations. This green one is officially announced as a recreation of the signature product from a traditional candy shop that had closed down, I explained. It wasn't just my family's shop that had closed. Michael's family shop also faced difficulties and closed when we were just over 20 years old. When developing new products, I remembered those peppermints and wanted to bring them back so many people could enjoy them again. So, I got permission from Michael's parents and recreated it. The soothing yet mild taste, offering a gentle sweetness, became popular mainly among young women because it's so deliciously easy to eat. Just try one, I suggested. I brought the candy to his lips and Michael, albeit reluctantly, accepted it. He slowly put it in his mouth. The taste is exactly the same, he noted. I thought to myself, it's been about 15 years since the shop closed, yet he recognizes it as the exact same taste, but I didn't say it out loud. Of course, it should be. We worked really hard to replicate the exact flavor with machinery. It would be a problem if it wasn't the same, I said, emphasizing the effort put into recreating the taste. I deliberately asked Michael, who had become quiet. Weren't peppermints supposed to be something only old people eat? If so, isn't it strange that a peppermint, which has been around for decades, is most popular among young people? Just a coincidence, maybe, Michael retorted. Emily, remembering the words I had said during the speech, glared at Michael as if to say, were you the one who said that? Emily is as proud of her work as I am. Witnessing his wife's anger, Michael said he had a stomach ache and needed to go home, then ran off. I apologize for my husband's rude behavior. We will have a thorough discussion at home, Emily said. Her commanding smile making an intimately grab the hem of my jacket. Is he going to be okay? Annie wondered. I don't think so, but it's the result of his actions, so it can't be helped, I responded. I was truly grateful for my wife's gentle nature. After much deliberation, I called Emily to the president's office a few days later. Is this about the networking event? I was planning to apologize again, she began. It is about the event, but I was wondering how Michael is doing. Is he okay? I asked cautiously. Emily, looking relieved, simply answered, he's left. So, they seem to be filing a divorce. Knowing Emily's deep love for traditional candies, I imagined her anger was substantial, but I hadn't expected a divorce in just a few days. So, it seems like I caused your divorce. I'm sorry. Let me know if there's anything I can do to help, I offered. We didn't divorce, she clarified. Emily happily explained what had happened. Despite saying he hated peppermints, Michael didn't actually dislike them. Once, feeling guilty about always asking him to take out the trash, Emily decided to do it herself and found an old candy box at the bottom of the trash bag. Since Michael was the one doing the housework, he thought he had hidden his secret well. He actually wanted to work with candies, but couldn't tell his parents due to his adolescence. In that time the shop closed, and he had to give up on the path of a traditional candy maker, she revealed. After confirming his true desire to pursue a career in candy making, Emily persuaded an acquaintance to allow Michael to train with him. He said he would take care of him if he was serious about learning candy making as a live-in apprenticeship, she said, and Michael immediately became an apprentice. Now, he's being strictly trained by a craftsman with a strong work ethic from morning till night. Please visit if he ever opens his own shop. He says he wants to have one someday, she requested. It looks like we've got a formidable rival. We had to continue working hard without complacency. Leave it to me, I'll beat him thoroughly. Despite it being her own husband, our head of planning and development showed no mercy. Years after the networking event, Annie and I visited a certain shop for inspection. It was the shop Michael had opened after completing his apprenticeship. Annie, who usually doesn't talk much but goes on about candies non-stop, was excitedly peeking into the shop. She was originally a regular at our peppermint specialty shop, and we became close after I noticed her frequent visits and struck up a conversation, eventually leading to marriage. I nostalgically remembered how she looked back then. It's surprisingly traditional looking for a candy shop, isn't it? Annie commented, contrary to what I had expected from Michael, who I thought would opt for a modern, stylish design, but the shop had a quaint appearance. I wondered if mentioning it resembled his family's candy shop would upset him. We can go inside now. I noticed, as Michael's shop, specializing in peanut candies, was popular enough to have lines form before opening and sell out before closing, especially on weekends. Finally, it was our turn, and inside, over 20 types of peanut candies were displayed in the showcase. While many were designed with young consumers in mind, focusing on appearance, Michael's dedication was evident in the variety, including candies distinguished by the origin of the peanuts. As we deliberated over which to choose, Michael, who came to replenish the products, caught my eye. "Why are you here?" he asked. "I'm here for espionage, obviously. Be grateful I didn't bring Emily." I joked, as Emily had decided not to enter this shop, thinking her advice would be unwelcome. She had asked me to just buy some souvenirs today. Mentioning Emily's name seemed to prevent Michael from making any careless remarks, and he silently continued his work. "Which do you recommend?" I inquired. "All of them, every single one, so you'll realize you can't beat us." That is a comment that would surely delight his parents if they heard it. His words brought a smile to my face. Today, there's a reunion being held at a local high-end restaurant to celebrate the 60th birthdays of my classmates. I was having a great time catching up with friends I hadn't seen in a while. Then, one of the classmates, called Jack, raised his voice. "Those living off pensions and broke can just leave." Jack was glaring at me. The friends around us looked surprised, but I wasn't shocked at all. Jack has always been the type to act this way towards those he considers beneath him. At that moment, classmates who attended the reunion said to him, "Hey, how could you not know?" Jack then turned pale. "My name is Daniel, and I'm 61 years old. I live with my wife and our son, who has already become independent. Our son lives alone, so it's just my wife and me at home. I retired from my company at 60 and moved back to the countryside where I was born and raised. Despite my son's objections, saying the city is more convenient for old age, my wife and I moved into this house left by my parents. Having been raised in the countryside, city life never suited me. On sunny days, I till the land and grow crops. On rainy days, I read at home. Living this life has been my dream for many years. That sounds like a nice lifestyle. My wife, Emily, said, following me here. We had never farmed before, but the neighbors taught us how to do it kindly. Among them, our neighbor George was especially kind. George, too, lives with his wife and is one of those who moved to the countryside after turning 60. Tomatoes don't like too much water, so don't water them too much. Is that so? For us, who knew nothing, every day was a continuous learning process. Emily, who was raised in the city, thought it would be hard to live here, but she ended up liking this lifestyle too. One day, George took me and Emily to a place. It was the local community center of this countryside town. Being in the countryside, it's important to participate in the community to interact with the neighbors, George taught us. Having lived in the city for about 43 years since leaving this countryside at 18, my wife and I had a life unfamiliar with neighborhood interactions, so it was refreshing. When we arrived at the community center, George urged us to go inside. Inside, several community members were already seated. Everyone looked at us, the newcomers, all at once. Emily whispered, "Is it okay for us to enter? It's kind of nerve-wracking," and grabbed my arm. I reassured her, "It's fine. This is the countryside where I grew up," and we went in together. When Emily and I found a place to sit, an elderly man spoke to me. "Isn't that Daniel? You've come back here." The elderly man was Alex. He was the one who taught me karate when I was a child. I was filled with nostalgia. "Alex, it's been a long time." Emily also greeted him lightly. "You've grown up so much and even have a beautiful wife now. I'm relieved. Let's keep in touch from now on." Alex said this and shook my hand. Then, the door of the community center burst open. "I'm sorry for being late. I was caught up with work." It was Jack. Seeing me seated, Jack looked surprised. I never expected to encounter Jack again, and I was so shocked that I lost my words. "What, you came back here?" Jack sneered as he looked at me. Feeling unsure how to respond, I honestly said, "I've retired and moved back here to celebrate turning 60. Are you a local resident, Jack?" Jack snorted in disdain. "I'm still actively working and even serving as the leader of the community. Unlike you, I'm not useless." Jack made a condescending remark. "Jack is the leader of this community. No way." I couldn't believe Jack's words. And Jack's rude attitude didn't stop. "So, you're living off a pension? Hey, are you too poor to even pay the community fees?" Emily was taken aback by Jack's words, her eyes wide. The other residents seemed shocked as well. Jack has always been like this. His parents worked in the city, so compared to the rest of his classmates, he lived a more affluent life. As a result, the clothes he wore and the things he had were always new, drawing everyone's attention. Moreover, he always flaunted them, looking down on me who only wore hand-me-downs from my brother. "You're always wearing rag clothes. So lame. Don't you have anything better to wear, you poor thing? Stay away from me." Jack always called me poor and excluded me from the group. Each time, it hurt my heart. Wanting to avoid further hurt, I started avoiding Jack, but he kept picking on me. "Hey, don't ignore me. You've got some nerve to ignore me like this." Jack was extremely arrogant. Reaching my limit, I raised my voice at Jack during our middle school graduation. "Cut it out, will you? Why are you so mean to me?" Then, Jack laughed and said, "I just hate poor people." Hearing those words, I resolved never to involve myself with Jack again. Yet, to meet him here of all places, I must be really unlucky. I could only sigh. I have savings and a pension, so I can pay the community fees just fine. No need to worry. I said to Jack, trying to keep my irritation in check. However, Jack glared at me, saying, "I'm paying taxes with the money I've earned through hard work. Show some gratitude." The residents watching our exchange seemed taken aback. Then, Alex spoke up quietly. "Hey, Jack, you might be working now, but soon you'll be on a pension too, right? There's no need for such nastiness, is there?" Alex admonished Jack in a low voice. Jack seemed unconvinced but couldn't talk back to Alex, the elder, and just clicked his tongue. "Daniel, just don't cause any trouble for everyone in the community. You're just a high school graduate and incompetent." "There's no way I'd cause trouble. Even if I'm just a high school graduate, I'll do my part properly." I felt my body trembling with anger. Why has Jack always been so mean-spirited? Emily beside me was completely looking down. Ignoring my irritation, Jack stepped forward to speak. "Today, we need to decide who will be in charge of cleaning the park tomorrow." Jack made an unbelievable statement. "Usually, we ask people to clean in turns, but this time, I thought we'd ask those who are free because they're living off pensions." The community center buzzed with whispers. In this rural town, many residents live on pensions. It was unbelievable that he would make such a statement. Moreover, just because someone is living off a pension doesn't mean they're idle. What on earth is this man talking about? Then, Alex raised his voice. "Calling those living on pensions idle is too disrespectful. I'm on a pension too, but at my age, cleaning every day is hard." Jack just laughed. "It's not about you, Alex. You're elderly, after all. I was thinking of asking the idle Daniel to take on the cleaning duty." Emily and I were in disbelief. We couldn't understand why we, who had just joined the community, had to be assigned cleaning duty. As I looked puzzled, Jack immediately glared at me. "You're not working anyway, and you must be bored at home, right? Take this chance to clean up the town." I was too angry to speak and just nodded. Emily felt the same. After a while, when the community meeting ended, Emily and I wanted to leave the community center before Jack could say anything else, so we started to run. But Jack stood in our way as if to block our path. "Also, create this document and insert it into the circular notice. Make sure it's done by tomorrow." I couldn't stay silent any longer at Jack's words. Isn't this a bit too forceful? Isn't creating the circular notice the leader's job? We have to do the cleaning as well. Then Jack glared at me again. "What? Talking back to me? Do you think you're so important?" Jack crossed his arms and raised his voice. I raised my voice too, not wanting to be outdone. "Aren't we ex-classmates? There's no superior or inferior among us." "What are you talking about? I graduated from a prestigious university and am now a manager at a major company. On the other hand, you're unemployed and living on a pension. There's a world of difference between you and me. Don't lump us together." Jack seemed determined to treat me as an unemployed pauper. My second life in the countryside, which I had looked forward to, was ruined because of Jack. Without saying anything, Emily took the circular notice documents and said, "Let's go home quickly." I ignored Jack and went home. Upon arriving home, Emily started to get angry. "What is Jack so rude? Saying you're incompetent, living off a pension, and poor. How could he say such things?" I was surprised. Emily is usually gentle and rarely gets angry. "I'm sorry for making you feel uncomfortable." When I apologized, Emily shook her head. "You didn't do anything wrong. Let's enjoy living in the countryside together." Emily comforted me. From the next day, we were busy with community activities. After breakfast, Emily and I arrived at the designated park. This park is the largest in the countryside, even including a sports ground. Are we supposed to clean this huge park, just the two of us? Surprised, I started cleaning with Emily. Initially, I was irritated by Jack's high-handed attitude, but as I cleaned, I felt refreshed, as if my mind was being cleansed. While we were quietly picking up trash, George came in his jogging suit. "I'll help out. Usually, more people clean this park, so it will take a lot of time with just the two of you." Saying that, George started putting trash into the garbage bag. "George, thank you so much. We really appreciate it." Emily and I were touched by George's kindness. Then, Alex came along, saying, "I don't know if an old man like me will be of much use, but I can at least pick up trash." "Thank you." As the four of us picked up trash, Jack became the topic of conversation. I always knew he had a bad attitude, but to be that bad is just hopeless. "Exactly. He's too rude to you, Daniel." Both seemed unable to forgive Jack's disrespectful behavior. Even when electing the leader, he nominated himself but doesn't participate in any community events because they're a hassle. And to make demeaning remarks about those living on pensions is unforgivable. Don't you have anything to say about it? Alex looked at me. I laughed and said, "Jack has always been like that, so I'm used to it by now." It seemed like Alex and George were surprised by my words. Thanks to the help of our two friends, we were able to finish much earlier than planned. "Thank you so much. It's all clean now because of you two. Would you like to come over for some coffee as a thank you?" Emily said, and both nodded happily. We arrived home and served coffee and sweets on the porch. Alex and George enjoyed the treats with relish. I loved these leisurely moments in the countryside. Sitting on the porch always brought back old memories. Alex, with a smile, asked me, "Daniel, what made you decide to come back here?" I have been working in the city ever since graduating from high school and was mentally and physically exhausted. I had made up my mind to move to the countryside once I retired. Fortunately, Emily agreed with me, so here we are, I replied. George nodded and added, "I came here for the exact same reasons as you, Daniel. This place has charms that the city lacks." We four were having a great time. However, at that moment, we spotted Jack walking down the street in front of our house. I almost dropped my coffee in surprise. The four of us fell silent and looked down. We could roughly guess what Jack would say if our eyes met. But the next moment, Jack looked at us and laughed. "What's this? A gathering of pensioners?" We pretended not to hear Jack's voice and ignored him. Then, Jack got angry. "Are you ignoring the words of the community leader? Living off people's taxes and still acting like this? That's why I can't stand poor people." At Jack's words, George's face turned red with anger. "We've paid our taxes too in the past. How can you speak like that? Who do you think you are, Jack?" Alex and I tried desperately to calm George down, but his anger didn't subside. Jack, too, was shaking with rage. "As a community leader, I'm working for this countryside. You have no right to criticize me. If you're so upset, try working at a major company like I do." Jack left in anger. "Jack really thinks highly of himself, doesn't he? It's truly unpleasant," Emily remarked. "George, it's best not to mind Jack. He's always been like that. Worrying about him is a waste of time and energy," I advised. George nodded at my words, but he seemed disheartened. For a while, we didn't encounter Jack, and peaceful days continued. Emily and I, along with creating the circular notice documents, gardening, and having coffee with George and his wife, were enjoying our time. However, we hadn't realized that this was the calm before the storm. One morning, I went to fetch the newspaper that had been delivered to the mailbox. Just then, I saw George from the neighboring house coming out with a large cardboard box in his arms. Curious, I called out to him, "George, is something wrong?" Hearing my voice, George looked at me with a lack of energy. "Actually, the landlord suddenly told us to leave." I was shocked to hear George's words. I immediately asked him why, and his answer shocked me even more. It seems Jack had something to do with persuading the landlord behind the scenes. I was at a loss for words. I knew Jack was bad, but I didn't realize he was this bad. That's unacceptable. I'll go talk to Jack about this. It's okay. I don't want to have anything to do with him anymore. George looked utterly exhausted. Do you have a place to move to yet? George quietly shook his head at my question. Because we were told to leave just 2 days ago. For now, we're thinking of going to my wife's parents' place, George said. I felt a deep disdain for Jack. Jack is not human. I was infuriated beyond words. After that, George and his wife drove away in a small truck. I stood there, rooted to the spot until the truck was out of sight. Worried that I hadn't returned after going out to get the newspaper, Emily came outside. When I told her about George, her eyes widened in shock. I can't believe it. Exactly. Emily and I lived with a sense of loneliness without George for a while. Then, Emily and I decided on something. We resolved to leave the community group. We knew well that leaving the community group in the countryside might lead to being looked at unfavorably, but we absolutely did not want to have anything more to do with Jack. When I told Jack about our decision to leave, he laughed loudly and said, I guess the community fees were too much for you, huh? But I no longer had the desire to talk to Jack and completely ignored him. He continued to grumble something in the background, but Emily and I walked away without paying any attention and went home. From that point on, our countryside life became even more enjoyable. Because we no longer had to worry about Jack. Since we started our countryside life, our first autumn arrived. True to the phrase of fruitful autumn, our garden's chestnut tree began to bear many chestnuts. And then, I received a postcard. The postcard was inscribed with an announcement for a middle school reunion. Additionally, it mentioned a celebration of our 60th birthdays. Emily peered over and said, the venue is a high-end restaurant. How lovely, but honestly, I wasn't keen on going. Because I thought Jack would likely attend the reunion. However, Emily told me, we don't know how many more chances we'll get to meet our classmates. Just ignore Jack and go. Considering we were all past our 60th birthdays, I thought Emily was right. I decided to attend. On the day of the reunion, I changed into the clothes Emily had prepared for me. Having Emily pick out my suits since my working days, this familiar scene made my heart flutter. Emily smiled at me and said, I hope your reunion with your classmates will be a joyful time. I put on my shoes and left the house. I felt a bit awkward in my seldom-worn suit, but I was looking forward to meeting my classmates. I took the bus and got off near the high-end restaurant, then walked the rest of the way. The restaurant had an imposing gate, and I felt a bit nervous entering. I was led to a room at the back, where several classmates were already chatting. The table was set with a lavish course meal that all looked delicious. I looked around. Jack hadn't arrived yet. I hoped it would stay peaceful if Jack didn't show up. As I took my seat, my classmates started talking to me nostalgically. It's been so long, you've completely turned into an old man. That's true for both of us, isn't it? We enjoyed light-hearted conversations, feeling as if we had returned to our middle school days. When I mentioned that I had retired, my classmates looked at me with envy. Retired? Huh, I envy you. I'm planning to work until I'm 70. I've been working for 43 years, so I'm just tired now. Daniel, you were always the hardest worker among us. While I was enjoying the conversation with my classmates, the room door swung open and Jack walked in. Jack was dressed in a fine suit. Seeing me seated, Jack clearly had a puzzled look on his face. Surprisingly, He chose to sit right across from me. Who invited Daniel here? He's living off his pension and doesn't have money. The courses here are expensive. The classmates thought Jack was joking and laughed. However, I couldn't stand Jack belittling me at this joyous occasion. Hey, Jack, it's a day of celebration, so let's not spoil the mood with such comments, all right? Hearing my words, Jack burst out laughing. What are you talking about? Your mere presence here is ruining the atmosphere. The classmates suddenly fell silent. They must have realized Jack wasn't joking. One classmate, unable to watch anymore, told Jack, "What are you saying, Jack? Let's just have a good time." But Jack seemed displeased with my earlier comment and kept making snide remarks towards me. You know the saying, no rest for the poor. There are companies that would hire you even after 60, so go work. Every time Jack made a snide remark, the room fell silent, and an uneasy atmosphere prevailed. I had reached my limit. Enough. Today is supposed to be a joyous occasion where we classmates reunite. If all you can do is judge me, then leave. Jack's face turned red with anger upon hearing my words. The one who should leave is not me but you. Pensioners and poor folks should just leave. Jack, Daniel is not poor. The classmates looked pale. Then, it happened. Excuse me. The restaurant's owner, Charles, entered the room with a lavish dish. Puzzled, one classmate said to Charles, "We didn't order this." Charles, looking at me, said, "Daniel has been a great help to us, so this is just a small token of our appreciation." Seeing Charles's face, I said, "Charles, you've already thanked me more than enough, and you don't have to worry about it anymore." But Charles shook his head. "That's not passable. Thanks to you, we've been able to keep this restaurant running." Thanks to Daniel. Jack looked confused. Charles, with a puzzled look, said, "You're being rude. If it weren't for Daniel, this restaurant wouldn't exist." Then, disbelievingly, Jack retorted, "You're thanked even for something. It might rain tomorrow." The classmates laughed. "So, it's going to rain every day then?" I can't believe such a poor person would be thanked. I understand if someone working in a big company like me is thanked, but him." Interrupting Jack, a classmate said, "Hey, how do you not know?" "About what?" "Daniel isn't poor. He's wealthier than any of us." "Huh?" Jack looked at me incredulously. Charles spoke up. "Daniel used to be the president of Bank A." Jack's face turned pale. "Daniel was the president of that major bank. That can't be true." Charles raised his voice. "You're really being rude. Daniel helped this restaurant with financing when other banks abandoned us, and he's lent a helping hand to other businesses as well. It's unbelievable that you treat him as poor." Jack was desperately wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. He seemed to panic to put his feelings into words. "Indeed, I was once the president of Bank A, the largest bank in the region. When I first joined the bank through a high school graduate program, my superiors and peers looked down on me, much like how Jack is doing now. I was treated as incompetent by my direct supervisor and constantly told by my peers that my incompetence was due to my lower education. However, quitting now would mean admitting defeat. And that was something I absolutely wanted to avoid. Once I had made up my mind, I wanted to see it through to the end with full responsibility. So, I persevered and asked my condescending supervisor for advice on how to work, even though he despised me. To prove my peers wrong, who kept calling me undereducated, I studied hard every day. I arrived at the office earlier than anyone else and did everything I could, including cleaning and odd jobs. Gradually, I gained strength, and even the supervisor, who had looked down on me, began to rely on me. 30 years after joining the company, I was approved at the shareholders' meeting to become the president of Bank A. Despite all the employees being elite graduates from prestigious universities, it was unanimously decided that I would be the president. I was truly surprised when I was approached about becoming the president. Typically, presidents come from prestigious universities. When I hesitated, the previous president, Mr. Anderson, said to me, "You are the only one fit to be the president of this bank, Daniel. It doesn't matter what your academic background is. What's important for a president is how much you can work for the bank." Hearing these words made me truly happy. It felt like my efforts up until now were being recognized. I dedicated myself to my work, keeping Mr. Anderson's words close to my heart. The bank thrives thanks to the people and companies in the community. Therefore, I wanted to be of some help to them. I actively participated in loan discussions, which presidents usually do not attend, and provided loans to struggling businesses and residents. The companies I loaned to became more profitable and deposited significant amounts of money in Bank A. Thanks to this, Bank A grew even larger. People who received loans thanked me with tears in their eyes, and when they ran into me on the street, they thanked me with a smile. This alone made me proud of my work. I was indeed the president of Bank A, but that's all in the past. I have no intention of boasting about it now, I said. My classmates applauded my words. Then, one of them said, "Isn't Jack's company in partnership with Bank A? It would be wise not to be disrespectful to Daniel anymore." Jack's face turned even paler. At that moment, Jack's phone rang loudly. With a feeble voice, Jack answered the phone. "Hello, what do you mean? I'm being demoted." Jack was thrown into a panic. The classmates watching nearby wondered what was happening as they looked at Jack. After hanging up, Jack looked at me and started to apologize. "Daniel, I was wrong in everything I said and did. Please forgive me." "Jack, it's too late now. No matter how much you apologize, the hurt you caused me remains," I replied. No way." The reason Jack apologized to me was probably because I had inadvertently discussed Jack's behavior with President Johnson of his company during a drinking party. During my time as president, I had provided a significant loan to Jack's company. Since then, I had become drinking buddies with Mr. Johnson. When I discussed Jack's lack of common sense with Mr. Johnson, he clearly looked perplexed. He was angry, saying that he didn't need such an employee in his company. The call Jack received was probably from Mr. Johnson, informing him of his demotion. Afterward, Jack quietly despaired, seemingly unable to hear anyone else. The classmates I hadn't seen in a long time were just as they had always been, and we had a great time together. The day after the reunion, I went outside to do some morning exercises. There was Jack, coming to apologize. Both Emily and I were so surprised that we were at a loss for words. "Please, can you ask Mr. Johnson of my company not to demote me? I've worked hard for the company. Being demoted at this age is just too harsh." As I struggled to respond, my neighbor, George, shouted out. Jack looked at George as if he had seen a ghost. "Hey, cut it out. You've been terrible to Daniel all this time, and it's too late to start acting differently now. Why are you even here? Weren't you told by the landlord to leave?" Jack is bewildered. "Actually, I once provided a loan to the landlord of the house next door, so I asked the landlord to let George live in the house again." Jack is astonished. I locked eyes with Jack, who was apologizing. "Like I said yesterday, I have no intention of helping you. You must have stepped on many people to get to where you are. Start over from scratch in this time. Don't drag others into it." At my words, Jack broke down crying on the spot. But no one tried to help Jack. 6 months later, Jack voluntarily resigned before being demoted to a regional office. Despite having looked down on pensioners as poor, Jack is now living on a pension himself. In the community, residents who couldn't stand Jack's arrogant ways drove him out. With his behavior, it's no wonder he was driven out. It's his own fault that he's now leading a quiet and lonely retirement. As for me, I continue to live in the countryside. My garden has grown quite impressive. I plan to keep enjoying this pleasant rural life with Emily. Even though a police officer visited our house, I wasn't particularly alarmed since it was a familiar face. However, that was naive of me. My heartbeat skyrocketed when Officer John mentioned arresting my wife for fraud. "We're arresting your wife on suspicion of fraud. We need to conduct an interrogation immediately," said John. He then forced his way into the house, pushing me aside as I tried to restrain him, saying, "Wait a minute, please." He then made a serious announcement. "The victim, who claims to have been defrauded, says they'll forgive the deed if the stolen amount is returned. Can you immediately compensate for the $10,000 loss?" $10,000. That's impossible right away, I replied. Dissatisfied with my answer, John coldly retorted, "Then we'll have to take your wife. We can't tolerate someone skillfully deceiving others and taking their money." Initially, I was bewildered, but the more I heard, the more I felt something strange. "Are you sure my wife committed fraud? She's been hospitalized for the past 2 years. "What? But your wife is supposed to be working for a major trading company, right?" Hearing John's words, my suspicions grew. My name is Alex, an office worker in my 30s. Though it's the prime of my career, I've been unable to immerse myself in work. I have a family of 3, including my wife Sarah and our 3rd-grade son, Eric. Sarah has been hospitalized for the past 2 years due to illness. Believing in Sarah's recovery, I leave work on time to dedicate myself to household chores and child care. After 2 years, I've gotten used to managing chores efficiently and helping Eric with his homework. There are days when I have to work on weekends, but I still manage to visit Sarah with Eric 2 or 3 times a month. Wishing for Sarah's speedy recovery occupies most of my thoughts, but lately, something else has been troubling me. I've started to notice some unsettling movements around our house. One day, after stopping by the supermarket on my way home from work, I spotted someone dressed as a police officer lurking nearby. "Good evening. Are you on patrol? Is something wrong?" I asked. The officer was startled by my sudden approach because he hadn't seemed not to notice me behind him. After apologizing for surprising him, I inquired about the situation, and he began speaking in hushed tones while showing his badge. "Actually, there have been reports of a suspicious person in the area. A masked adult wearing sunglasses has been approaching children. So please be careful. If you see anyone suspicious, let us know." The badge had the name John on it. According to him, there is a dangerous person wandering around here. I thought to myself that I needed to warn Eric about being cautious. After greeting me, John left. "Eric, I just met a police officer. A police officer said there's been a suspicious person around, so be careful, okay?" I cautioned Eric while unpacking groceries. He was busy with his homework, so he gave a distracted response. He has been manly more and more, but I was worried he wasn't paying attention. "Are you listening?" I asked, somewhat exasperated, but then I was suddenly preoccupied with another matter. "Eric, sorry, I forgot to set the bread maker this morning. Go ahead and take a bath first. I'll start cooking now." Rushing to the bread maker, I was momentarily choked by the steam that rose as I opened the lid. "Calm down, Dad," Eric said with a sigh. "I baked bread since you forgot, and you're putting the laundry in the wrong place again. Please don't make me tell you multiple times. Try to remember after the first time." At work, people commend me for managing household chores and child care on my own, but in truth, Eric is several times more reliable than I am. It's probably such a dependable son that we've been able to manage even without Sarah. If Mom doesn't come home soon, it'll be a hassle for you, Eric, I said jokingly. Eric responded by pursing his lips tightly. It's okay, I can take care of things at home just fine, but Mom needs to get better first, and even when she comes back, I'll still help out with the household, he said. With tears welling up in his eyes and a frown forming between his brows, Eric said. Eric believes Sarah's hospitalization is his fault for being a nuisance. One day when we visited Sarah, she was weakened by medication side effects. She vomited repeatedly in front of Eric. If you are not a good boy, I will have a hard time. Sarah had scolded Eric before her illness was discovered. This conversation seems to have deeply impacted him. So, he's vowed never to trouble his mother again. Let's visit Mom this weekend. She's looking forward to seeing how well you're doing in your studies. Now, let's eat and finish your homework, I encouraged. Saying this with a cheerful voice, Eric seemed thrilled to see Sarah and jumped around in excitement, helping with the meal preparation. A week flew by quickly, and the day to visit Sarah arrived. Eric, in a great mood from the morning, said enthusiastically, "Let's buy the cheesecake Mom likes before we go." I don't think Mom can eat something so heavy. Well, if she doesn't want it, you can eat it, I replied. After this exchange, we bought a popular cheesecake from a souvenir shop at the station and visited the hospital room. Sarah seemed to be in relatively good spirits that day, but she looked somewhat troubled. I decided to talk to her while Eric was away in the bathroom. Although it wasn't about her health, which was a relief, however, what she shared was quite unsettling. Recently, I've been receiving silent calls. The caller doesn't say their name, but the phone is definitely connected. Sometimes, it stays connected for as long as 5 minutes, she said. That's creepy. Actually, there have been police patrols around our area too, mentioning a suspicious person lurking around. It's a dangerous world we live in. Whether it's the news or social media, it seems we're bombarded with bad news. I hope Sarah's health improves soon and we can return to a peaceful life, but in these times worries never seem to end. Silent calls can really wear you down mentally, can't they? You haven't talked to the police yet, have you? It doesn't seem like there's any direct harm, and I doubt anyone would come to the hospital to cause trouble. What are you talking about? It'll be too late if something happens, right? I'll talk to the police patrolling our area. While we were discussing this, Eric returned. This visit was what Eric had been looking forward to. We decided to put an end to our somber conversation and enjoyed the cheesecake while chatting happily. The following week, as I was returning from work, I saw John patrolling. I thought it was a good opportunity to discuss the silent calls, but John was deeply engaged in a conversation with Eric. John, thank you for your hard work, Eric. Have you finished your homework? I finished it a long time ago. I went out to play with friends and just got back. After nodding at Eric's response, I turned to face John. Sorry to interrupt your work, but I have a concern and was wondering if I could have a moment of your time. Of course, that's fine. What's the matter? Just knowing that someone is nearby to protect us is incredibly reassuring. However, I'd prefer not to let Eric hear about this conversation. Eric is already concerned about Sarah. If he knew about the silent calls to Sarah, it would surely distract him from his studies and daily life. Eric, can you go home and warm this up for me? What? No, I want to hear the conversation too. This conversation doesn't concern you, Eric. Please go inside. Despite asking Eric to warm up the food we bought, he was reluctant to comply. Sensing my intention, John offered his help. Eric, you can help out at home too, right? That's very commendable, John praised. But Eric wasn't so easily swayed by such childlike persuasion. Feeling bad for keeping John busy, I was about to leave when he said, I'm around here almost every day, so feel free to talk to me anytime. I thanked John and, together with Eric, waved goodbye to him. We went back home. While Eric and I were having dinner, Eric started talking with his mouth full of food. "John is really a nice guy, isn't he?" "Yeah, protecting the town is a tough job. We should be grateful. By the way, what were you talking about before I arrived? Did he mention any sightings or something?" I casually asked, recalling the serious conversation between Eric and John. But Eric's reply cast a shadow over my heart. He was asking about what time Dad usually comes home, when Mom will be back, and if there's anyone else living with us. He mentioned there have been burglaries around here, Eric said. I haven't heard of any burglary incidents in our neighborhood. Since Eric is still young, he might be concerned about whether Eric is living alone or if there's someone to take care of him. However, it felt intrusive, like someone was prying into our lives, which didn't sit well with me. It would be great if we could live without any incidents. Also, Eric, be careful not to share too much information about our home with others, I advised. Although Eric didn't seem entirely convinced, he replied, "Okay," and I decided not to press the issue further. About a month had passed since then. As I was preparing to visit Sarah with Eric, the doorbell rang. Since visitors were rare, I assumed it might be a salesperson and checked the monitor. I found only to see John there. "Good morning. Is there something wrong?" I greeted John as I opened the door. Seeing a familiar face in the form of a police officer didn't particularly alarm me. However, that was naive of me. John's words made my heart rate spike. "Your wife is under arrest for suspicion of fraud. We need to conduct an immediate investigation." John said this and ignored my words. "Please wait." He forcibly entered the house. "Can we talk about this? There is a child here, so please, let's stay at the entrance." I tried to keep my voice low not to disturb Eric, who was getting ready inside, but John disregarded that and barged into the living room. Then he made a grave announcement. There are accusations of a crime against her. The victim, who claims to have been defrauded, says they are willing to forgive without escalating the matter if they are reimbursed. Can you cover the loss of $10,000 right now? $10,000? How did this happen? That's impossible right now, I muttered while confused. In fact, with the expenses for 2 people plus Sarah's medical bills on a single income, our savings were nearly depleted. The savings that were more than sufficient when my wife was working were almost gone. "Then, I will have to take your wife with me. We cannot tolerate anyone exploiting vulnerable individuals and aggressively defrauding them of money." Hearing John's words, I felt a disconnect with my image of Sarah. "Are you sure it was my wife who committed fraud? She has been hospitalized for the past 2 years. Isn't your wife supposed to be working for a major trading company?" Hearing John's words, my suspicions grew. How did John know about Sarah's previous employer? It's possible Eric might have mentioned it, but he wouldn't know what a trading company entails. And Sarah's workplace had even become a joke since he couldn't answer it precisely. It's hard to believe the police would know every local resident's occupation, and even if they looked it up, they should have quickly found out about her resignation. "John, could I see your police badge again, please?" At my request, he visibly showed signs of disturbance. At this point, I was certain he wasn't a police officer, but I was worried about pressing the issue too much in case it led to a complaint. After all, Eric was inside the house as well. I didn't want to put my child in any danger. John quickly regained his composure and, with feigned authority, raised his voice. "Well, if your wife isn't here, I have no choice but to take you instead. What will you do? Will you come to the station with me? Or will you settle this with money? Of course, I'll have to handcuff you if we go to the police station." Looking outside from the entrance, there was no police car in sight. He had handcuffs, but they lacked a sense of authenticity. It looked somewhat flimsy. They seemed like something you might buy at a store, resembling a toy. Paying was not an option. But if I were taken away, who knows what might happen? I grabbed my cell phone, pretending to be scared, and pleaded with John. I have a family member who might be able to lend us some money. Can I check with them to see if they can transfer the funds? That way, both Eric and I won't have to leave here, right? After a moment's thought, John nodded, all right. But you'll make the call here. I can't let you use it as a means to escape. I'd have to call for backup otherwise. Thank you, I said, opening the Contacts app. I wanted to contact the police, but John was closely watching my actions, and he would hear the conversation. So, I decided to call a sharp-witted friend who was a lawyer. We kept in touch regularly, and he was aware of Sarah's illness and often visited to offer support. Please answer the phone. My plea was answered as the call was picked up after a few rings. Sorry to bother you so suddenly, but could you lend me about $10,000? I'll make sure to pay you back. What's going on? He asked, sounding concerned. Sarah has apparently committed fraud, going to the homes of the elderly and swindling them out of their money. If we pay $10,000 now, it seems we can settle this. Please help. Hey, but as for Sarah, please, right now the police are inside the house, and they're suggesting that it would be better to settle this matter through a settlement if possible. It might seem strange, but that's okay. When I interrupted the conversation to continue explaining, it seemed like he understood well. Are you at home? He confirmed again before saying, I'll transfer the money today, so please wait, and then hung up the phone. It seems like we can manage the money issue. I'll make the payment today. I told John, and he nodded in satisfaction. Then please transfer the money to the account I'm about to tell you. Since I'm helping out with this, it could be risky for my position. I'll make myself scarce once the payment is confirmed, he said. After saying that, John handed me a note with the transfer details and headed towards the entrance. When I opened the front door, a loud yelling voice could be heard from the room. My mom would never do such a thing. You're a liar. It seemed like Eric, who had been listening, was glaring at John with his shoulders hove. John was surprised by the fierce anger directed at him, but considering the opponent was a child, he quickly regained his composure. Eric, I understand you want to believe that, but your mom is a criminal. When someone does something wrong, they need to make amends, he said. Triggered by the word criminal, Eric attacked John even more aggressively. Shut up. The criminal is you. You're the one who's going to get caught by the police. As Eric made a commotion at the entrance, curious neighbors began to gather and wonder what was happening. With the presence of the police, the crowd of onlookers quickly grew. In such a situation, John, who looked flustered, tried to escape by saying something vague. Suddenly, Eric raised his voice loudly. That man is a bad person. Catch him. Reacting to Eric's voice, the onlookers restrained John for the moment. As he tried to shake them off and escape, the residents began to seriously hold him down. Almost at the same time, a police car appeared. The real police had arrived. Feeling relieved, I was about to let my guard down when I saw Eric mustering his courage. I couldn't show any weakness. I approached a person who had gotten out of the police car to explain the situation. I was asked to confirm the name and was told, we received a call from someone claiming to be a friend of yours, so I told them what happened. I mentioned that there was talk of settling with money because my wife was suspected of fraud, and the police officers shook their heads, saying, that's not passable. I didn't suspect anything since they had been patrolling around our house and had a police badge, I said. Hearing this, the police took the badge from John. According to the police, although the badge looked authentic, there was no one named John in their department. It turned out to be a scam pretending to be the police. John, who was about to be taken away in the patrol car, was desperately resisting. I was just following orders. I'm not the bad guy. Besides, This guy's wife works for a major company and is rich, right? Rich people should give some money to the poor. I was furious at John's baseless and selfish arguments. Before I could say anything, Eric yelled back loudly. My mom is fighting an illness and is hospitalized. My dad is working hard for my mom and me. Don't talk like you're the only one suffering. Silenced by Eric's scolding, John had nothing to say. The gathered neighbors also agreed with Eric and said that's right, and sent applause to cheer him on. John couldn't say anything in response and quietly got into the police car. It turned out that the call to the police was made by the friend, who sensed that something serious was happening from the phone call. Speaking to him, who is a lawyer, he gave me an idea of what might happen to John, who had impersonated a police officer using a false name. Later, the police also contacted me, informing me that John was involved in another case as well. The silent calls to Sarah were also traced back to John's phone, indicating some nefarious plan. Furthermore, it appears he had a previous conviction for fraud, which involves deceiving people to gain illegal financial benefits. He also claimed to invest the collected money to increase it, charging people for seminars as part of a group. Most of the money wasn't actually invested, and although a small portion was returned as dividends, he later claimed investment failures and embezzled the rest. Handling others' money for investment requires a license, which John never possesses. Additionally, forging a police badge also constitutes a crime. John has indeed committed many crimes. Given what I've discussed with a lawyer friend and the police, it seems likely that a severe sentence will be handed down. After all those has been done, it's only right that the crimes are fully atoned for. Above all, the most important thing is that Eric wasn't harmed. The police and our neighbors praised him too. Eric did a great job standing up to the bad adult. Eric stood by his principles and fought against the wrongdoer. As a parent, it was nerve-wracking to watch, but I'm proud of the way Eric lives his life. Eric, embarrassed by the praise, blushed and turned away, saying it's nothing. You knew your kind mother would never do such a thing, didn't you? Of course, I believe in both you and your mother. Hearing my words, Eric smiled happily. Despite everything, it's a relief that nothing serious happened. When I asked Eric if he had finished your homework, he widened his eyes in shock and rushed to his room. Oh no, I just remembered I have a report due tomorrow. I sighed and said, but it was a relief to see our normal routine returning. Later on, the incident was briefly covered in the local newspaper. The headline reads, Elementary school student's courage leads to arrest of criminal. Mom, this is about me. Eric insisted on bringing the newspaper to show to Sarah, clearly eager for her to see the article. Of course, Sarah was already informed, and the hospital had various newspapers, including local ones, so she might have seen it. However, Sarah reacted as if it was her first time seeing it, indulging Eric. Wow, is that really about Eric? I can't believe it. Really, look, it even says Eric. Listening to Eric's earnest explanation while pointing at the paper, Sarah also showed great surprise. Watching the two of them, I shared with Sarah what happened at the time. Eric was really cool. He yelled, my mom would never do such a thing, and even the criminal got scared. Eric, did you really say that for me? You've grown impressive. Thank you. As Sarah praised him and stroked his head, Eric's eyes welled up with tears for some reason. Sarah asked with concern, what's wrong? To which Eric replied in a soft voice, I'll be good and do my best. I won't cause you any trouble, Mom. Please get better soon. I feel like it's my fault you got sick. As Eric's tears fell, Sarah gently hugged him and said, This illness isn't your fault, Eric. It's a trial that God has given me, but it's one that we can definitely overcome, so don't worry. Then, as if remembering something, Sarah continued, You know, I once said that if you weren't good, I would get sick. That's not true at all. I'm sorry for saying something so harsh." Before long, tears were in Sarah's eyes too, and the sound of their sniffles filled the hospital room. Dr. Smith also said that if things keep going this way, I might be able to leave the hospital soon. So hang in there, I'm doing my best too. Sarah has been looking really well lately. If things continue as they are, Dr. Smith's prediction about her being able to leave the hospital soon might just come true. With that hope, I sincerely prayed for her recovery. Months have passed since then. Sarah's battle with her illness came to an end. There were times when we feared the worst, but thanks to Dr. Smith's dedicated treatment and Sarah's efforts, she's now able to lead a normal life. Today is Eric's school visitation day. It's been a long time since Sarah and I went to see Eric at school together. Eric has really grown up, Sarah noted. Indeed, Eric stood confidently in front of the blackboard, just as Sarah said. The visitation day's theme was to present essays about future dreams. I remember seeing Eric revise his essay several times a few months ago. Although I usually check his homework, he insisted on keeping this essay a secret, so today was the first time I heard it. "My dream is to become a police officer. I've caused a lot of trouble for my parents until now, but I won't anymore. I've been treated kindly by many people, so I want to become a police officer to repay that kindness. I've realized that not everyone in the world is kind based on my experiences. I want to act to protect my loved ones from such people. Becoming a police officer is not easy, but my mom taught me that we can overcome any trial. My mom fought hard against a tough illness and managed to get better. I want to be an adult who doesn't give up when faced with difficulties. Just like her. If anything happens, I will protect my parents." Both Sarah and I couldn't help but shed tears as Eric passionately expressed his thoughts in a loud voice. I also made a firm vow to become a commendable father who can protect my family.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. "I will do my best." Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. "Did you not hear what I said?" "I'm sorry." I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. "I don't care what they say, I plan to quit any time," he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look, "To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day." Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. "So, you all get a chance." As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. "Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them." It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick? What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was. As the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.